Hi guys, it's Penelope in London, and we're looking at the full moon that's happening 29th in USA at 1923 in New York, and it's 1923 actually in California, and 22:28 p.m. in New York, and then in London it will be on the 30th at 3:28 a.m. So that's worth knowing depending where you are, if you want to know the exact time. So what I can do is show you, this is AstroSeek. You can look at your charts here. If you want a reading with me to understand your transits or your solar return or progress chart, and you want to learn some astrology, then you can book a session with me with my link below the YouTube video. And also, or if you're on Facebook watching, you can add me or just private message me and link in that way. So what we're going to do now is look at this chart, and this chart is going to be, this is London time I've chosen because I'm in London. And what we have going on that day, we're going to have the sun will be at 8 degrees, you can see here, and going into 9, and it's opposition. So a full moon is always opposing the moon, and the moon will be in Cancer. And what happens is that when we have a new moon, the moon is always on top of the sun. If you didn't know that, you know, it's time processing these things and understanding how they work. So full moon is where the moon opposes the sun. Then what we have is Venus, which is to do with our needs, is conjunct the South Node on that day, which is our past lives. And Venus is to do with, you know, our values and needs. And both of those are in Sagittarius. We've got the North Node in Gemini, and that's basically there for the next year. It's moving through. And then we've got also that day Lilith, which is the shadow, conjunct Uranus, which is to do with past life, long-term memory, trauma, and also breaking free of limitations. And we've got Mars in Aries, where it's quite at home, and it's also moving off. It's Pluto. We've got Pluto in Capricorn. You can see here that Pluto is 24 degrees, and Mars at the moment, if we look at Mars, Mars is 26. So we've had a square for a long time, the Mars to Pluto, but now it's moving off, but it's heading towards Uranus and Lilith. And I'm going to explain what some of these things mean so you can get an understanding. Chiron is our hypersensitivity in our wound, and Chiron takes between 49 and 51 years to move around the chart, and that will be squaring the full moon. So that's sensitivity. I'm going to explain what that means. And the other thing that we've got is that we've got a T-square going on with the nodes to the Neptune. And then Mercury is conjunct the Sun and Jupiter. And as we know, we have the conjunction Jupiter and Saturn, which is restriction. Jupiter is expansion, and Jupiter constriction are both 0 degrees, or coming up 1 degree now, 2 degrees of the sign of Aquarius. So now, if I explain the moon to you to give you an idea, so that full moon, I'm going to swap over to my solar fire chart so you can see the moon move. So this is the emanated page. So this is the chart of the 30th of December. And if I take this here, and you can see that we've got the moon at 8 degrees and we've got the sun at 8:50. So I'm just going to take that a few degrees ahead so you can see it exact. So if I go by minutes, you can see here that this is moving, and we've got the sun at 8:50 there. And if I keep going, then the sun is going to be aligned exactly with the moon, and this is what creates the full moon. So we got 8:53. There you go. So that's now exact. So you can see we've got that square Chiron to the moon. So this is our wound and the, you know, our wounding and hypersensitivity that's involved in this. So what we've got with the moon in Cancer, it's about our feeling of safety, and it's related to our home and our family and related activities, the gardening, cooking, all of that sort of stuff, household stuff. And it's where we're prone to emotional fluctuations, our emotions. And it's where we're looking to, often where we want to be forgiving, to forget in order to avoid being depressed and thinking too much about things. So also it's about our perception of the world can be very subjective. And it's where we want to create distance as well without feeling badly towards others. And with the moon in Cancer, and also it's a rich emotional manifestation and a real sense of belonging in the world. So it's where we feel we belong. Quite interestingly, the organs that are related to the moon and the sign of Cancer are the stomach, the ovary, the womb, the breast, the lymphatic system, and the breastbone. I mean, I'd limit it there, but it's a lot deeper than that. And also the moon in Cancer, or the sign of Cancer, is to do with our childhood environment. It's also to do with our roots. It's to do with our security. And a lot of us are looking at that right now because of what's going on in the world, more so than, maybe previous years. It's about protection, Mother Earth, also our family, ancestors. It's where we have nurturing, protection. Also, it can be to do with neglect, and where we can feel helpless, and our self-image, and where we can feel touchy, and to do with gender roles and the husband and wife. The moon connects to us, to our emotional reality, and Venus, actually, because we've got Venus, going up here as well. If we look at Venus on the south node at the past, that Venus is a feeling function, and the moon is a reaction to existing stimuli, what's going on around us. So we're reacting to things. Emotions are a reaction to our feelings and how often we react as well. So something comes up and can trigger us. So we can be quite shocked by our triggers sometimes. And if we look at that moon, it's squaring to Chiron, which is the wound. So it looks like, we might go through some triggering collectively at this time. It's also how our beliefs about what happened to us and how things happened. We've all got our own feelings around things that have happened to us in the past, and our emotions and our reactions to those feelings. And as we know that Cancer, the sign of Cancer, is to do with our security and the security of the home and family. So we're looking at the wounding around that at this time, because a lot of people are suffering right now, and also if we look to our relationship with the world and what's going on, we can feel very insecure with what's going on. We're not sure of what's ahead of us. And we externally, we might have some control over our internal life, but what the fourth house and the sign of Cancer is teaching us is that everything we need is really inside ourselves. So it's not outside ourselves. Our security is not really outside ourselves. It's in ourselves and what we think, and controlling our own belief systems and what we think. And because everything in life gets removed eventually. I mean, this is the ultimate, we're born and then we die. That sounds a bit heavy, but this is the reality. So if we overly identify with anything external, then we generally will fall into crisis. But the problem is that being human is that we will over-identify as we move through our lives. It's natural for us to over-identify with certain things, but as we mature and we see the bigger picture, we begin to, sort of soften in that way, and we don't do that so much. That doesn't happen for everybody, but for a lot of us, we begin to see that the security that we seek is not outside ourselves, and we do that with relationships. We do it with understanding, with the loss of parents maybe, or the loss of jobs. We begin to balance that area. And sometimes we might be shocked. We might think we're balanced in that area, and then we might meet somebody, or we might get a job we really want, or an item, and then we see that we're very attached to it again. And if you think of that's partly Scorpio as well, that being fixed, the fixed signs of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, we can have a problem with adapting to changes that take place around us. It can be quite difficult for us. I'm Scorpio rising and also Taurus North Node, so I really relate to that. The moon on that day is going to be in square to Chiron, as I've said, which is the wound. So you could look to where Chiron is in your own chart as well. to understand what you're dealing with, and the hypersensitivity as you move through life to your Chiron return, which happens around age 49 to 51. So with this aspect, looking at this aspect here, which I actually have natally, I have this aspect as a natal placement, and it's where it's to do with the feminine presence in our lives, and it's also can be to do with our own femininity, and that can be for males as well. Like the male has the inner feminine, and so does the feminine naturally, but the female also, the anima and the animus in the work of Carl Gustav Jung, the feminine also has the animus, which is the male response to the world that we project outwardly, and then the male will have the anima, which is the feminine response inwardly. So when we're looking at this, generally this moon and Chiron, we're looking at the mother, the early relationship with our own significant females in our lives, and the close relationships we had, or also where it could have been close, but it wasn't close, or maybe we were not nurtured, or we were mistreated and our needs were not met. And this can lead to unconscious resentment within us. So there can be at this time with this full moon here, some unconscious resentment towards, maybe the way we see the world, Mother Earth and stuff like that. We might feel very let down at this time. And, we could feel overly attached to the jobs that we've had, that we've lost, and also to, what the government are doing or not doing for us. This, there can be some insecurity. There can also be where we've got painful and suppressed, things that have been suppressed in our consciousness and have been buried deep begin to sort of come up and ask us when things come up from the unconscious, really what's going on is that we need to really begin to deal with them. Something I would point out that a great astrologer friend of mine of 25 years in evolutionary astrology said to me was that, all of these painful events that do come up for us, in fact, I'll read exactly what she said. She said, that it's when we feel confused or upset or obsessed by something or by another, it's our unconscious that's trying to work towards individuation and consciousness. And this symbolism that's going on right now with the Saturn and Jupiter being in the sign of Aquarius, we're heading into a period of individuation, which means ultimately becoming whole. And also Pluto will be moving into Aquarius in 2023, then it will retrograde back, and then it will move in 2024 until 2044 it will remain in the sign of Aquarius. So we're going through a whole different time. And COVID, however difficult it's been one of the things that's leading us into being individuated and being more, maybe thinking about others more, or the groups that we are interested in, and working together. So once we look at our long buried past and begin to truly help ourselves, then we're able to help others, and have a creative side to our nature as well, and to also integrate the shadow. So there's a lot of work, because the moon is also to do with our ego, our personality. So what else I can tell you is that the sun will be opposing the moon, which we already know. And then the sun is conjunct Mercury up here. So this is where we're, interacting. And also it's in the sign of Capricorn, which colors how that works out. This is to do with patriarchy. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So Saturn, if we look, is in Aquarius at the moment, just moved into Aquarius, where it will be for the next 2 to 2.5 years. The sun is trining Uranus at that time, but it's separating, and the moon is opposition to Mercury. So if we look at the moon at this time, it is in opposition to Mercury. It's going to be applying as it moves through, because that's 14 degrees. So as the moon moves through, it's going to touch in with Mercury, because it moves faster than Mercury. The moon takes 28 days to move around the chart, and Mercury takes 88 days to move to orb the chart. And what we have with the moon opposition to Mercury, it can bring problems, with our thinking. It's where we're, maybe not able to always understand or interpret what's going on correctly. So we can see that this symbolism here is quite difficult for us, and also the symbolism of the moon in opposition to Mercury, maybe going back over things, and where we have difficulty with our emotions, and also where we can be gossipy as well. The moon opposition Mercury, we might be gossiping about a lot of things that are going on currently. And we can use our intelligence here, but we don't want to use it to deceive people. It's really important that we don't deceive people at this time, or ourselves. We don't want to start believing our own untruths. So we want to be looking to see that we are telling ourselves the truth, even if it's about our past and our past wounding. It's like, are we really being honest with ourselves? Because at some point we have to mature with regard to our own trauma, which is very difficult, because when we've not been looked after or nurtured, we can feel a lot of resentment. So how this full moon is going to play out, I believe it's called a cold moon. I haven't read into that very deeply, but that's worth knowing as well. We've got Mercury sextile to Neptune, and then also we've got Mars squaring Jupiter at this time. So Mars is at 26 and it's squaring to Jupiter, and then Mars is also square to Pluto, which is to do, where we're stubborn. We can be determined, but we can hurt each other's feelings with our sharp judgments, and decisive, and being decisive but overly decisive can be meaning in the sense that we could make some good changes. And we've got Jupiter conjunct Saturn, which we know about, and this develops in two ways. When Saturn is dominant in our feelings, in our own feelings, it can basically mean that we will form binding relationships and teach others. And if Jupiter sort of becomes too dominant, then the energies of Saturn are suppressed. And then we also might think, be full of self-importance and overly confident and not being, humble. So we want to watch ourselves during this period. The other thing I will look at is the Neptune is squaring the nodes, which will move off eventually. I'm going to show you when that moves off. So the Neptune and the nodes, you can see here, this is a T-square, it's called the tension. And with this going up here, the Venus conjunct the South Node, there's something about the past, and maybe we'll be reminiscing over what, looking at our values and needs. So I think also one other thing, the Mars in Aries, which is fascinating to me, because that Mars here was, if I go back a bit, you're going to see that it was conjunct to Pluto, not conjunct, it was square to Pluto for a long time there. So let's go back by days, and you can watch Mars move back to 23 degrees here. So watch 25, 23, there you go. So we got Mars at this point, and this was the 23rd. Mars, Eris takes 560 years to move around the chart, and Eris is to do with, just sort of disorder. She's the goddess of where we're disorderly and there's no order, so to speak. So with these squaring to Pluto, that would have caused a lot of hardship for us. So that's moving off. But as I said, I'm going to show you then that Mars is going to catch up with Uranus and Lilith, the shadow, breaking free of limitations, the libido, not so much sexual, but, wanting to move ahead. And Mars is like a can opener. As it moves over planets, it activates. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens during this period of time. So Mars is happy, whilst it's happy in the sign of Aries, it can also be, one of the worst places for it as well, because we're desiring self-realization, and clearly at this time it's very difficult for us to self-actualize. Is where we, may feel unmanageable supply, too much energy, and we need to control it and direct it. And I would suggest, actually, for many of us, because of lockdown, we've not been able to exercise and do our normal routines and walking, and we've been covering up and breathing through masks. So even though we might have been doing the foods and looking after ourselves with supplements and whatever, we might be feeling a bit low. So if you can get out and go for a good walk, safely, of course, in the respect of don't go in by crowds and protecting yourself. I won't go into the political side of this, but we've got to, make sure that we are looking after ourselves. And as we go through with the Mars, we can feel very disrupted with it here. And also we can feel that we want to be, look at the finer details and maybe look at not wanting to escape attention, because Mars is very quick in the sign of Aries and very impulsive as well. There can be a lot of impulsivity. So we want to look at what we're doing with our energy, but at the same time, Mars in Aries gives us a lot of courage, and it helps us to have some initiative, and it's got positive qualities. But patience isn't one of the qualities with Mars there, because Mars in Aries is very militant and there can be some aggression. So as that moves on, this is the thing that I was thinking about as this moves on. I'm going to show you now. We're going to go by days, and we're going to take this forward, and I'm going to end the video, but I'm just going to, and then I'll do another video on what's upcoming. But you see the Mars here, watch it move on into Uranus and Lilith, the shadows. So we're going by days. So you can see Mars moving, 28 degrees, 29. So you know what to expect. 0 degrees, it's going to move into Taurus. And then it's going to keep going forward. And then it's going to, on the 20th, which is the day of the inauguration, you can see that we've got here, we've got the moon is going to be 22. It's going to be on top of Aries there. And then we've got the Mars conjunct Uranus conjunct Lilith. So this will be another video that I will make that will talk about that, because what's going to then be happening for us is that Saturn is going to be squaring Uranus in the coming weeks ahead. It's already in that square, but it's just going to keep getting tighter and move into orb. And we want to understand how we're going to use the energy of 2021 to look after ourselves and use it in the best way possible. But the good thing is that what will be happening is that the nodes, as they keep moving forward, they'll be moving off Neptune. So we'll get a bit more clarity going forward. It might take a few months, but it's going to happen. Okay, that's it. Catch you later. Thanks for watching.